All right, good morning, everyone. So we've got close to 40, 50 people here with us today, and about 32% of you are representing your district. So you are on the continuous improvement team member for your district, with a close second coming in from the ISDs, and then we have quite a few the building team chair people. So welcome, we love having you here. How long have you been doing this? Well, this has been interesting. We've got about 34% are been doing this for more than 10 years. So you've been involved in the continuous improvement process. You recognize that it's evolving and changing at the state level, and you're here to learn more. And then 28% of you, this is your first year. So good luck, you're in the right room, where we'll take care of you. And just know that we're, like Mike said, we're learning with you. So this is definitely a process, and we're excited to have everyone in the room. So thank you for participating.
Thanks, Hilda. So we're going to use, because we want our session to be interactive, and we do have some certain spots that we built in for some reflection and Q&A. But also we have what is called Slido. So if you want to go ahead and insert the slido.com and the number, or just go ahead and use the QR code, and that way we can keep track of questions as they come up, and if we need to stop and address them, we will do so at that time. Let me get out of the way. Oh, on the dashboard as well, from the original bit.ly.
And I just want to show real quick on the dashboard, this is the same spot here. You can just click this link on our dashboard, or you can scan this QR code. It'll get you to that same Slido.
Dave, why don't we leave that up just for a moment? So on the dashboard, in addition to the slide deck, these are all the resources that we are sharing and will highlight throughout the presentation. When you get down to the reference, so on slide 7, the first reference will be a team building resource. It's right there on the dashboard as well. So those follow exactly with our presentation today. It's just separated out so for fast reference if you're actually using the dashboard to go back to some of these resources. So we started this journey in 2018, and the focus from the Michigan Department of Ed was systematic thinking. And so back in the Continuous Improvement Conference back in 2018, we started to really get school districts to think about systems at the district level that ultimately affect the building level. Because the old way of doing this was school, and I'm guilty, I would write my plan, I would hit submit, it would go to central office, they cut and paste from there, they make sure everything looks good on the consolidated app. Back then we had binders, then it went electronic with Assist, and then just like Kurt Russell said this morning, or maybe it was Ben, dust them off the next year, did we do anything with it? So the field came back and said, we need something more robust. And on behalf of MDE, they listened. So they built what was considered the MICIP platform, which is a tool to help support the MICIP process. So the goal is that, you know how you have the meeting after the meeting, that's where everything gets done? My mentality is we want this to be the meeting after the meeting for continuous improvement. Because that's where the real work is going to happen, is at the district level with representation from the building level. So with that, when ESSA was passed, which took the place of No Child Left Behind, there was really a central focus on the whole child. So within the MICIP process and platform, all of these are working together to really impact each of those students that are in the classroom level. Because after all, and Mr. Russell said it fantastic, is we're here for the kids. Sometimes we may lose sight of that, but that's truly what we're after, is what's in the best interest of the kids. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because it's inherent in everything that we do. So it's always important to have an equity lens in all the work, and if we're really working through continuous improvement properly, it's inherent in everything, all the conversations that we have, selection of resources, team member selection, you name it. It's going to be a part of that in terms of the work of being in that cycle of continuous improvement. If you take nothing else from today, that very first part of that sentence, stopping at the word equally, this process and platform can't do the work for you. It is so important that all of the work that you do outside of the platform is equally, if not more important, as to what you put into the platform. The platform is just a tool. So if you don't know how to use the hammer, you're not going to be able to put the nail in. So you can use that analogy on any type of tool that you have. So it's so important that your teams, whether they're at the district level, central office level, school level, parental level, whatever that case may be, is that that work is much more important than the actual platform itself. So I'm not degrading that at all, but that work is critical to moving you on your continuous improvement journey. So take just a moment and look at these three of some pre-work to consider. Current district systems in place, establish a well-representative and collaborative district-level team, and do you actually have a mission and vision? So process that for about 20 seconds and do a quick turn and talk is, which one of these stands out to you is we're lacking it and we're getting there, and or we have this in place and we're really proud of it. So 20 seconds processing time and then do a quick turn and talk. So about 30 seconds, if you could bring your table discussions to a close, would be fantastic. 30 seconds. Thank you. One correction is when you're entering questions into Slido, we may actually answer them right there. But if it's a bigger question that the group is servicing, then we may call that question out and just answer it collectively or have a discussion with the whole group. So before we move forward, if I could have Dave, if you could hit the team building resource. So there are a number of different toolkits or resources, one of the same, is that are on the MICIP resource page for MDE. So this is one. Let's say that part of your discussion was, I don't even know what a district level team would look like. So then, oh, wait a minute, there was a resource I remember at the Continuous Improvement Conference that can give me some guidance. So just think of these as things as you need them. It's not a linear process that it goes from start to finish. It's basically real-time learning when you need it the most, okay? So with that, if you can kind of peruse the topics there. Because if without a high-functioning team, you're not going to get high-functioning continuous improvement. And that doesn't mean that you have to have an entire team of 50 or 60 people. It's just you got to have the right people at the right time to challenge or success or to overcome challenges and to also celebrate successes that you're having. Because sometimes we always look at it with the negative, but we also should be celebrating the great things that we're doing in our districts as well. So within that itself, There's a roster in there that's embedded. There's a little learning bite about building your team. Once again, just think of these as real-time resources when you actually need to put them into practice. Thanks, Dave.
Mike, can I add just one quick technical detail about this?
Yes.
So the document, if it opens in a browser window like it did for us, if you try to click any of these links, it just doesn't work. It like reloads it. So if you want to follow any of the links in it, you actually have to download it and open it as a PDF. It's just one of the technical things that we've realized over the years of doing this.
Thanks, Dave. I forgot about that. And there might be some other tools that you might have to do the same thing as well. Download them as a PDF and actually to get access to the hyperlinks that are embedded with them. So we were gather, study, plan, do. That was kind of the old thinking in terms of the school improvement process. And it's very similar to what I would consider the new rollout. But our presentation today is primarily going to focus on assessing needs in the plan. We will hit all areas, but it will be a very fast course. And through, Ben had mentioned it, through the collaboration series, with our first one being in January, what we intend to do is to go deeper in each aspect of the continuous improvement process. So even though you're going to get a crash course today, is we will go deeper in the next 3 series that we have scheduled throughout the year. So I just want to make a clarifying statement is, the user group, which mainly Hilda will be there, Ben will be there, and probably the 3 of us will be there in some capacity. We get a little snippet of an update, and then it's more about putting the people in the room to discuss things that are going well and what they did to make them go well, and to try to collectively problem solve some challenges. So the user group is kind of an open agenda. It lasts 1 hour, and you do not need to sign up for that. And if you're part of the MICIP Continuous Improvement newsletter, those dates will be in there as well. The collaboration group is the one that you want to sign up for if you want to be invested in that, because we have sketchies associated with that. And the sign up is run through Muskegon. Dave has set that up with his organization. Those are 2-hour segments, but we also are having built-in time for Q&A, but it's really taking deeper dives into various aspects of continuous improvement. So outside of December, it's every month. It's either a user group or it's the collaboration series. Any questions on those 2 resources that we're going to have for you the rest of the year? Yes?
I'm sorry, I may not have heard you. How do you sign up or get affiliated with those?
It's in the, if it's not in the dashboard, we will put it in that dashboard. Okay. How you get on their listservs. Oh, it's already there. So there it is right there for the collaboration series.
Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Great question. Any others regarding those 2 upcoming events to support you in your journey? Thanks for bringing that up, Dave. So hopefully the pre-work is really the most important in your context of continuous improvement. Once again, the platform itself is just basically going to house your work, but that work outside of there, going into there, is the most important. So when we're looking at the pre-work does everybody have the same understanding of continuous improvement? I'm talking about your team now. Because if your team doesn't understand it, that's where it needs to start, because you'll never be able to roll it out to everybody else if you're not on the same page with your team. So it's proper to have everybody's voices that you need representative on that team. And then, like I said, the outside, the inside, the platform. Outside is most critical versus the platform, which is kind of the nuts and bolts portion of it. So I'm going to give you just a moment this is a busy graphic. Just take just a moment to kind of look this over, and then I will explain it. So take 20 seconds to kind of process the graphic that you have in front of you here. So the first portion that I want to draw your attention to, and I don't have a laser pointer, but Dave's arrow is on the 2-way arrow there. So yes, thank you very much. That graphic to me, or that little arrow, means communication up and communication down. Because if it's one way, you can't do it. It's got to be up and down or side to side, however you want to use the analogy. But it's the teams that are communicating, because you can make all these great decisions at the district level, but if the teams at the building level aren't on board or they don't understand why, it's not going to be implemented with any type of fidelity at all. So you're just going to get some really bad results. You might get some pockets of successes, but there's communication that needs to happen up and down. I know that I'm involved with RISD, and one of the things I surfaced last year was we function as our own school district. Nobody thinks of ISDs as their own district. So we are going through this same process that of continuous improvement with the 6 programs the Ottawa ISD supports. So those are internal. So the first thing that we had to do is we had to establish a district team. And so with that district team is we had to make sure everybody was there. Come to find out, when we first started, we needed 2 more players that we didn't think about. So we invited them on board because their voices were going to be critical. So I'm going through the exact same process myself, and I'm learning along the way. I'm no expert, but I really like the fact is that we're thinking about our ISD as our own district, because that's how we think about our other districts that we serve in Ottawa itself. So with that graphic is, if we went back to, don't go back, Dave, is about the whole child focus, is that's the center of everything that we do, and why we do it is for the kids. And Kurt, I think it's Kurt, is it Kurt or Kirk? Kurt Russell this morning, he hit it on the head. Is if kids don't feel valued, they are not going to learn. They don't want to be anywhere near the adults that are in that particular classroom or even in the district. And one of the really cool things that Dave brought up at our table when we were discussing was his way of running his classroom: reflection, planning, data gathering. It's continuous improvement. So even without ever knowing what he was going to talk about, his graphic that he put up there, it was continuous improvement. And you know it works because you heard how those kids talked about it on the video that they did. So then we have the focus on that, and we have our district-wide improvement plan, and then we march forward to make sure it's implemented, and we be able to monitor and adjust it as we go. I'm not going to go into the consolidated application process. That is an integral part, because that's where the money flows, but that is more of where do we get the money to support what we're doing. So I always think of that as the afterthought, is let's make sure we have a solid plan before we go after any type of money. So another little processing graphic here is just take a moment and think about where you're at on this continuum. Just take a moment. So sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable, and I'm just going to ask you to do the same thing that you were asked to do this morning, is kind of give a reflection where you think, if you're in a team right now, where you lie on this spectrum: far left, far right, or somewhere in the middle. So go ahead and have a quick conversation at your table, and I would love to have some risk takers after we get done with the conversation to share. Slide that has a bit.ly on it, because some people didn't get it, so just return to a slide.
For the dashboard.
Correct.
Got it. Yep.
All right, here's where audience participation is do I have any risk takers willing to share where they're at or where they may have heard others if they're not part of the same district? Oh, I got my first risk taker. Go ahead. Well, thanks for being honest. So you're on the 0 to 1 scale at your district. Okay, and we have to start somewhere, right? Someone else. How'd you get the reserve table? That's pretty nice. Good answer. How about another risk taker about where they want to share where they're at? Yes, please.
We were talking about how we've been on skill improvement forever. And we're talking about different platforms we've been through in our 20-some years of being on the team. But we're kind of caught in the middle because we haven't been, in our positions, we've been in the classroom. We chose to go back and look at the classroom for the last couple of years. So we are learning the MICIP for the first time because we're familiar with the SIS. But we are well, like we feel like we're also over on the right-hand side, that transitioning and introducing district goals and strategies, all of that stuff. So we're kind of like caught in the middle.
So you have existing structures in place, but you're learning a new system to absorb MICIP process and platform into your existing. So that's fair. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're in the classroom.
Okay. All right, Dave, if you want to make a quick jump back. We had something in the Slido about where's the bit.ly? Where are these resources? So right there at the very top, go ahead, and if you don't have that already in your URL. Wish I could do that with my presentation notes on my phone, Dave. Thank you. Don't be shy, but if you're not set with bit.ly, raise your hand and we'll leave it up there just a little longer. All right, thanks, Dave. So there are other examples of system level work that you may be involved in, whether you're a district or an ISD. MICIP process and platform is one, and maybe many of you are choosing to engage in that, but there are others that you may be associated with because these have been around a little bit longer. I guess the goal here is that if you have something in place and it's not working, go back and re-examine it and make it more robust, because if you're still not getting the results that you want, you got to kind of reflect, as Kurt Russell said, is when you had a couple kids ask him some questions that would paralyzed his soul, basically, is you need to go back and reflect. So here we have the portion of the whole child. Once again, this is embedded within the MICIP process. It's not an add-on. It is part of the process when you're looking at all the things that you would like to do and implement, but at the heart of it is really addressing the kid. I mean, that's the most important thing. So you'll hear me say that a lot, is it's hard as adults, especially when you've been out of the classroom, is to keep that mindset of what's good for the kids, what's good for the kids. But you probably maybe you start every meeting is, are we here for the kids? Let's keep that always in mind. So readiness data, once again, so timely with that conversation this morning, was what are some types of data that you have available to you or maybe you've not thought of using before? And we're going to show you a couple graphics. There's one in particular is that I wish I had as a building principal, because everybody's like, well, where's the data? Where's the data? I'm like, all I got is MSTEP data. Maybe I have PSAT data. I didn't have much, or ACT. So then, it broadened my horizons in terms of what I could actually use for data. So Dave, if you want to go ahead and open that data inventory. I think her first name's Amelia Burkhart. I can't remember. Victoria. So this is where I was thinking as a building principal. I was like trying to fill in the gaps here. It just gave me a couple of examples. It was more theoretical. I didn't quite know what to do. And I thought I was pretty intelligent, but yet I didn't have like a template to follow. But these are actually the 4 types of data where you have basically your student learning, your demographic, your programs, and your perception data. And so you can do surveys, and you're looking at your student information systems and gleaning information from there. So Dave, if you could jump back out, please. This is the slide I wish I had 9 years ago. It put it all in perspective for me, and then I could add on to that. So this, to me, would have been the most valuable slide, whether I was a district leader or a building principal, or even part of my school improvement team. And once again, I see you taking pictures, fantastic. You have access to this entire thing. We're not going to hide anything from you today. So you can even add on to those parts, but if you go back just one time, Dave, go back one step. No, go back, I'm sorry, go back to the slide deck. I'm sorry. I don't know if I can go back or not. Maybe So even though we will get to it, when you first get into the MICIP, the landing page, there's academics, non-academics, and systems. Those are like the 3 buckets that are within the MICIP platform. So I just want to draw attention to that. We will show that a little bit later through some of the resources that we have. But once again, this was a great starting point. It really opened my eyes once I saw it. I wish I had it 9 years ago. I'm going to stop just for a moment before I showcase these resources. Are there any questions that are in the Slido right now?
One was just asking how to be added to the MICIP communication. So I linked it there. I did add it to our dashboard.
Okay, so I don't know if everybody heard that. Is how do I get access to the monthly bulletins? There is now a link there that you go in and sign up with your email and name, and you'll get it. So it's on our dashboard. That was it? Okay. So it might be helpful for the remainder of this morning and then the afternoon that you're going to have some of these open today. In particular, the MICIP process guide and the CI monthly checklist. So go ahead, Dave. We're going to start with the first one.
Process guide?
No, was it process or was either one? Doesn't matter. So let's go to the table of contents. So the process guide is basically the continuous improvement process, and it's just aligning itself right to the platform. And so there's another document which I will show you that it's a Google Doc, so it can be interactive with your teams. It'll be a little bit later in our presentation. But this process guide is the school improvement process, continuous improvement. And this mirrors exactly what the platform looks like, the technical side. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on these because, once again, if you need those resources, you're going to be able to put your finger right on them and make them real-time and useful for you with your team. So let's back out, Dave. Let's go to the CI monthly checklist. Now, I don't want to scare anybody, but this is the coup de grace of district level and school level, what I should be doing at a moment in time. This is the double gold bar standard. But this will walk you through what should I be doing in August to get ready for September? What should I be doing in September to get ready for October? Within this, it has embedded resources as well. It's not going to leave you hanging. So within that itself, about, let's say that forming a team, that's something we need to do in August, that team building toolkit would be embedded right in this document as well. So once again, I don't want to scare, but it's broken into 2 areas. You have what's happening at the district level, and then what's happening at the building level. And it even has reminders about, hey, buildings, you need to share that with your district improvement team. Hey, district improvement team, you need to share this with your building level teams. So it has that two-way communication built in through some written prompts. Is don't forget to communicate. So once again, very robust resource. This is the coup de grace, the double gold bar standard, but it's worth a look is what are we currently doing now, and what could we add based on the suggestions that are part of the continuous monthly checklist. So it runs all the way through August through June. So very robust. You'd have to really break it down, but maybe there's something you can use right now or something that will stimulate your thinking for what you could do in the future. So we go back to the slide deck, Dave. On the far right-hand side, we're going to take you to a website that a group called Starfish maintains, and it's basically consultants throughout the state, whether we're virtual or face-to-face. This is dedicated to supporting the MICIP process, and on probably every resource that we're discussing or in linking today can be found on the SI timeline. So we do update this periodically based on the need of what we're hearing. Let's say something new comes from MDE that needs our attention. So then we go on the backside, it's a Weebly, and we go in and we'll assign it to somebody or we'll do it collectively as a group to make the proper update to the SI timeline. So that is another resource that is worth investigating as well. So it's a little confusing, and it's hard to understand, and we've had some internal dialogue about this, is one data story leads to one goal. One data story leads to one goal. And also, one goal is the same as one plan, because your plans get added to the portfolio. So think of goal and plan as one and the same, because they are. And that data story, I'm not just saying one set of data, it could be multiple sets of data that ultimately gets you to your goal setting. But one goal needs one data story. So hit the next one here. To kind of stimulate your thinking, in the Starfish group, I had an epiphany 2 years ago, and I'm like, we don't fund goals. We fund strategies and activities, because that gets us to the goal. So then my colleague, Don Beck, down in Calhoun, he goes, Mike, you really changed my thinking when you said that. So he worked with some other people, and he put up some very good graphics from that one statement. And that was so powerful just to be in the same room when he showed these. So go ahead and click on goal flowcharts. At the time that we were looking at that transition from a system MICIP, we were pushing system-level goals. And we're trying to keep that goal very robust so that multiple things can fall underneath it. So the goal at the top is one large systems goal, and then the strategies that are going to support that goal are at the top: MTSS, Guaranteed Viable Curriculum, PLCs, and the Reading Essentials. Look how much that encompasses on that one big goal. There are several other examples here, so if you want to scroll up. Let's say that you have two goals in the system, and one of them is basically academic focused, and the other one is basically whole child focused. So now you have two goals, you've separated it out. So these are just ways of stimulating your thinking about how do I get to the goal or goals that are going to be able to be obtained through strategies and activities and the funding sources that we have. So we'll go one more example. Here is throwing 3 goals in there, or 4 goals, and the supporting strategies and activities. So this was very powerful when Don brought this out. So this would be worth a look when you go back to your district level leadership or cabinet if you're a superintendent or assistant superintendent, is just kind of look. One of the other things that you'll see, I think, is that sometimes it feels like we're serving 2 masters. We have the superintendent and board strategic plan, and then we have the MICIP plan. Find the common ground between them. I guarantee you can. Not every single thing is going into the MICIP platform. you'll never get anything if you have 16 goals in there. So you really want to hone in on what your data says, make the goal around it, and then attack it viciously so that the kids come out better from when you first started. But look for some common ground between the strategic plan, superintendent and board of ed, and what your continuous improvement plan. Once again, they don't have to be exact, but I'm guaranteeing that you're going to have some crossover. So kind of be thinking about that in terms of what would that look like, and those flow charts from Calhoun would be very helpful. So let's run back to the slide deck.
Mike, can I just make one quick connection?
You certainly can.
Mike had indicated earlier that in the MICIP platform, which we'll get to in here just a second, that you have one data story equals that one goal. And so in these cases, if you were to look at this, for those of you that are brand new in MICIP, in this case, there'd be two data stories. There'd be one data story that really focused on the well-rounded education, and then there'd be another data story that was really focused on those learning environments. And so those data stories become a goal. So in this case, you'd really only have one data story. Might have a lot of data in it, like Mike said, but you just have one story. And in this case, you'd have 4 data stories. So seeing how when you're starting the process, it might not be clear that one data story is going to end up equaling one goal. Those goals all go into your portfolio.
Thanks for the clarification, Dave. Appreciate it. Let's go back to the slide deck. Is this still me? Okay. Last one. So I think Ben, part of his opening statement is we were very good at building plans and setting goals. But where we tended to fall down was implementation, monitoring, and adjusting them as needed. We could be very proficient plan and goal writers. So I'm going to put an asterisk here, which already is, for Dave's unscientific estimation of where a majority of our time should be in the school in the continuous improvement process. So the pie chart is assess needs, then we build a plan, and then a majority of our time is implementing, monitoring, and adjusting. I'll give you a medical example. Let's say that you go in, you have a doctor's appointment, and you get some blood work, and you find that your cholesterol is high. So then, that's your assess needs process. Run some tests, my cholesterol is high, I have some numbers. You build a plan, either by yourself, do some research, or with your doctor, and then you're implementing that plan, you're monitoring it, and adjusting it. When you set the goal, let's say you wanted to reduce your cholesterol by 7%, like, well, I'm not getting to my goal. Well, maybe I want to reduce it to 5%. Don't change your goal. You look at what you can monitor and adjust to make it to your goal, because that's what's most important. So a majority of that time is implementing, monitoring, adjusting based on your needs and the goals that you set and the plan that you're implementing. And I think with that, we are turning it over to Mr. Frank Holes.
Thank you, Mike. Can we everybody just give a quick hand to Mike for getting us through the first part there? Okay, actually, I'll just let you know when to click. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. Hi, everybody. So I'm Frank Holes. I'm with the Office of Educational Supports. I'm a regional consultant. I work with 4 counties, Kalamazoo County, Calhoun County, Branch County, and Hillsdale County. And I know we do have a few of our representatives here in the room today, so it's exciting to see so many of you out here. We also have a great group from MDE who is here. And regardless of who is in the room, you're all here for different pieces based on your experience. You know, some of you are here because you are brand new and continuous improvement is brand new to you. And you are here to pick up as many bits and pieces as you can moving along. Some of you are going to be at the exact opposite end of the spectrum. You've been through this. You probably already know MICIP. You may even know all the pieces we're going to show you today. You're here to affirm that what you're doing is correct. And that's good too. And then there's going to be folks that are all over in between, some with more experience, some less experience, some who are going to have experience in a little older model, that we've had, and now they're kind of doing a tune-up to the new model. So we're going to see folks that are all over the place. Now, Mike did a great job of starting us off with the first two components of MICIP, and that's the mindset and getting us into process. And now that we're really firmly getting into process, I get to take over and take us into nuts and bolts around the first step, which is going to be the assess needs component. Many of you have been through this before, and even just as our keynote speaker this morning talked about, the idea that we have a continuous improvement process, even in a classroom that he utilizes. We have those processes in our schools. We have them at grade levels. We have them at district levels. They're there. What we're going to do in this little session here before lunch, I'm going to take you through the nuts and bolts of what are those intricate little steps that are a part of MICIP that might be a little bit different than if you've been a part of continuous improvement for 20 some odd years, or if you're doing this as a process in your classroom that might look a little bit different. So when we talk about the assess needs, there are 6 basic steps that go through in MICIP around discovering data. And you probably, again, like Mike said, we're going to be looking at our phones. We keep all of our notes right on here so that we can walk around as we're working. But this is very content heavy. It's content rich. Even for those of us who have been doing this for 25, 28 years, we still have to look at our cheat sheets. There's plenty of details that, they're up here, but they don't always just pop out when we need them. So you may see me looking down to pull components off of my phone to talk about here. So a lot of the things that we talk about in this first step around assessing needs, we talked about that older improvement system. I think Mike mentioned it, the gather, study, plan, do. And so what we're changing that and fine-tuning it along with our latest in implementation science, our latest in adult collaboration, all the things that once we know better, we want to do better. And so those are pieces that have refined a lot of the thinking that's gone into the MICIP process. Okay, Mike, let's go to the next slide there. The first 2 steps really are all about data. And data has been something I've hung my hat on as a career for 28 years. As a teacher, as a building principal, working in central office, working at the ISD, now working at the state. I've made a career out of working in data. And I think, as Mike said, most of the data that I worked with people in around analyzing and so forth has been, well, what's your M-STEP scores? Okay. Before that, it was, what were your MICIP scores? If any of you have been around long enough to remember MICIP a little further back. All right. What was your SAT scores? And then prior to that, what were your ACT scores? And I know we're dating some folks who have been around for a while to see various data platforms come and go. And so when we look at essentially the data processing, the data analysis, that hasn't changed a tremendous amount, okay? We're still taking data. We're still looking for what are the strengths, what are the challenges, and then we put this into 3 different buckets. We look at an academic bucket. We look at a non-academic, or could be SEL, behavioral type of bucket, whole child type of bucket. And then we also look at what pieces fit into a systems level bucket. Now, some of the things as we were leading, Allegan County is where I was at formerly, as we led a lot of their curriculum directors through the MICIP process a few years ago, lots of them started with academic pieces. They said, yeah, our math scores are in the tank. Kids can't read by 3rd grade. We're having trouble with all kinds of academic pieces. Okay, great place to start. MICIP's going to ask you to identify an area of inquiry, which in many cases is a perception. It might be a perception that a building principal has. It might be a perception that a superintendent has or a school board has. It could be a perception by parents and community and stakeholders. But you start with a perception. And then we find data to determine, is that perception reality? Or is it more of a, well, my gut tells me this, or I feel it in my heart. I really feel that that's the thing to do. Well, what's the data say? Because it always falls back to what does the data say? And so as we go through this, those will be the components we look at here. And as I was mentioning, in Allegan County, we started with everybody had academic pieces. And then as they dug into their data further and further, the realization hit that we don't have systems in place to support these things that we need to do. And so as you go through the journey with MICIP, whether you have a brand new team, whether you have inherited somebody else's team, because we know that happens, right? Somebody new comes on the job and you've inherited the team, or you're looking at saying, we're finishing off one goal, we're adding another, or we're just simply adding another goal, you're going to want to take a look at, where does your data take you? Your data is going to take you on a story. You have to follow the data, okay? Because sometimes you may think the data is going to take you one place, and the data takes you to a whole different place that you now have to address. Mike, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so data sets that we analyze, we said we've got different types up here. Dave, can you jump us back to slide 15 for a second? I want to go back to that. You know, when you go to conferences, there's always pieces that you find that are like, they're worth the price of admission, right? You find that one little nugget that you really want to go to. This is a piece that we found in our statewide group, MICIP, a couple of years ago, shared by the Victoria Barnhart group. And again, as Mike said, this was worth the price of admission. It's the thing that he wishes he would have had as a building principal. Because if you've made a career out of data like I had, where all you had was MSTEP, there's a whole lot more picture that we can paint around our whole child supports that go beyond MSTEP. Even when you look over here, like at the far edge, perception data, you know, you've got surveys, you've got opinions. I would throw out focus groups, having questions that you can talk to in either individual stakeholders or small groups. Anybody ever get like surveyed to death? Yeah, at my daughter's school, we get surveys like nonstop. And okay, I'm an educator, so I will continue to fill out the surveys because I know they're using them. But you know, it sure would be nice if they shared it back with us and told us what the results of the data were. So that's a plug for all of you to make sure if you're surveying, get the info back to your stakeholders. Okay? Our keynote talked about being transparent. Give that info back. Okay? Let people know where things are at. So perception data, yeah, that's a key component. And as I mentioned, that's often where we start. Then we start to look at some of these other pieces. Our demographics. Who are our students? Who are our families? Who are our teachers? What do we see in the demographics there? We take a look at achievement and outcome data. Yeah, we've got MSTEP. Once a year, we all get MSTEP data. All right? But there's so many other components that could be achievement or outcome data. And that's even going beyond your benchmarking data. Because now people are like, oh yeah, we got NWEA. All right, well, that's 3 times a year. What's that telling us? All right, and then you can get more of that, you know, localized individual classroom data, formative assessments. If anybody out there has read Street Data, fabulous book. If you have not read that, you've got to pick that up and read that, okay? Street Data tends to live at that intersection of perception from getting that student voice, that student experience, parent voice and parent experience on a very small level instead of just looking at that gigantic building-wide or district-wide level. So I definitely recommend, if you get a chance, pull up Street Data. It will make you challenge a lot of your assumptions coming and looking at data. But this right here, this is worth the price of admission. And luckily, it's on. You don't have to take pictures on your phone if you don't want to. You have all the links on our dashboard. But this is a good one to keep because you can look at lots of different types of data. That's the challenge. Can you go look at lots of different type of data rather than just one thing? You hang your hat on it because your gut tells you it's right. Your heart tells you it's right. Well, no, let's look at the data. Let's see what the data says. All right, thank you, Dave. Let's roll back up. We're on, I think, 22 is where we left off. Okay, so we're going to look at analyzing the data sets, and you can get as elaborate as you want with this. You know, I've done old school with sticky notes and T-charts and, you know, strengths and challenges and look for groupings. It works just as well as having gigantic spreadsheets that you can put all your information in and dig around and save it. So it's whatever works for you and your group. There are a number of different protocols that you can use. Probably many of you who have worked in Thinking Collaborative, if you've got the adaptive schools or cognitive coaching, you may have worked with the Lipton and Wellman data protocol. That one is very much kind of a basis for a lot of the work you're going to see coming ahead with root cause. But you don't have to be super elaborate. in your data. You just got to get started. And if you have a system in place, roll with it. Absolutely. Do something that's working for you and your team. Okay, Mike, ready? Oh, yes, good point. So what you're seeing up here in the nuts and bolts, these are actual snapshots from the MICIP platform. So as we're talking this process, the needs assessment process, you're going to see the components up here that you're actually going to be typing into in MICIP when we get to that point. Okay, so adding data sets, there are a number of data sets thanks to our friends at the Data Hub, who have connected MICIP with a number of other components around the state. And so you can see, for example, My School Data can pull in reports directly into MICIP for you. IDEX, if you're tied in with IDEX, IDEX Munetrix now, I think. They have combined forces, yes. So we'll see that change. The MTSS Center, if you're hooked into the My MTSS Data Center, there's another really great component that can pull in all kinds of different whole child data for you. And so these are different places that can pull live data as a snapshot directly into MICIP, but you can also enter your own data, as long as it's either in a PDF or JPEG, is that right, Dave? JPEG and PDF. If it's in one of those two forms, you can essentially upload your own data. So let's say you're giving surveys. Yeah, more surveys, right, Frank? Yeah. So if you're giving surveys and you've got it broken down to the results, if you're going to use a consistent reporting platform for your surveys, you could put that in a PDF, upload it into MICIP. Now you have a consistent piece that you can come back to when we get around to monitoring. We'll talk about monitoring after lunch today. All right, go ahead, next one there. Thanks.
Hey,
next
Frank,
screen, yes.
Frank, sorry, it's the
Go.
voice from above.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention, hopefully we'll get a chance to do some live demo stuff after lunch, but it is important to upload and have these data objects in the system for a later step in the process. Later on, we're going to be establishing our end targets and interim targets. And those end targets and interim targets have to tie back to a data object. And so later on, if you're going to say, hey, improvement, we want to see improvement in attendance, well, you're going to want to upload attendance data. Or if you're going to say, I want to see some improvement in the survey data, then you're going to want to upload that survey data that you want to see improvements in, because you have to tie your end targets and interim targets to a data object.
Very good. Thank you, David. So this next screen we're going to show here, we've talked about the first two steps in the assess needs. The next couple all live on the same screen in MICIP. And MICIP makes this look like it's very simple and unassuming and, oh gosh, this is an easy part of this. However, as Mike was talking, it's so much more about the process you do outside the platform, the work you're going to have with your team, the conversations you're going to have, the collaboration with lots of stakeholders to flavor this little stew really nicely. So even though you're going to see up here on the left-hand edge, yeah, there's 4 little narrative boxes that are going to ask you to put in some information. MICIP does not require you to put in complete sentences. It's not going to check your grammar. It's not going to check your spelling. This is a place where you get to capture the thoughts, the ideas of your team. And then it's going to hold on to it for you for the future to come back and reference to it. Okay, let's go to the next one there, Mike. So the step 3, this would have been the top box, is going to ask you to look at an initiative inventory. And the initiative inventory basically is looking at, well, what are we already doing around this area of inquiry? What's been working? What maybe hasn't been working? Where do we go with it? And so that becomes a real key component. Go to the next slide there, Dave. There are times when, as building leaders, whether you're administrative or not, you know that there are lots and lots of initiatives that are going on in your building. There are probably initiatives going on in your building that go back years and years and years. If you've had a turnover administrators, you probably have a new administrator that came in with a new thought. Hey, let's do this. Here's a really great strategy, a great initiative. I want us all to do that. And then perhaps there's a change in administration, and a new principal comes in and says, hey, I got this really great idea. Here's a new initiative. And they're going to make that one happen. And before long, you end up with staff who's been there a while saying, gosh, are we still doing this initiative? Oh yeah, I'm doing it. Yeah, I got that. Oh no, you're not doing it? Oh no, the new principal said we didn't have to do that one anymore. So you suddenly have a huge stockpile of initiatives, or you call them strategies, that are out there that people have been doing maybe sporadically, maybe a little here or there. Maybe it's someone's sacred cow. You know, they're looking at it as like, oh no, this is my strategy. I love it. It works for me. My kids love this. I'm not giving it up for anybody. Or maybe it was my idea, and I really think it's important, you know, even though it may not fit with where the rest of the building is going. So there are times when you can have too many pots bubbling away on the stove, and we have to sometimes give ourselves permission to say, what are the ones that we really don't need to put on the heat right now? Are there some initiatives that we can move to the back burner? Are there some initiatives that maybe have to come off the stove altogether to make room for where we're going to focus our time, our resources, our efforts in the current MICIP plan? Okay. So a couple questions that are up here, the little bullet items. Take a second, just kind of read those to yourselves. These are things that you and your team are going to want to talk about when we look at what are the initiatives that are currently going on in the building. So these all become part of that conversation. Again, the process, it's what you're doing outside of the platform to have these conversations with your staff. Okay, let's go to the, next slide. All right, once we get to that point, you're going to be looking at creating a gap statement. And the gap statement is, where are we at currently compared to where do we want to be? And what is the gap? Or if you're using positive language, you might say, what's the bridge between the two of them? Okay, so depending on your take on that, you can look at it as what's kind of holding us back from reaching our desired state. How do we get to that? Okay, so that's our step 5. Next one. And at that point, then we're going to write the data story. And the data story is a brief summary. Again, don't write a book. Keep it short. Keep it sweet. Put bulleted items in there. You know, the data story is going to say, what did we find that's working? What did we find that's not working? What are the things we're currently doing? What are things that we know we want to maybe move off the heat a little bit? What's our current reality? Where is it we want to go? And that's what our data story tells us. Okay. Next slide, Mike. Okay, quick check-in. Do we have any questions? We do.
I'm just going to lift the ones that apply to this section.
Got it. Yes. How often do we assess the needs? We do it basically once per cycle. So when you're developing a MICIP plan and a MICIP goal, as you get that to where you want it to be as its goal and plan, it might be a 2-year plan. It might be a 5-year plan. Okay? We're going to look at this big process of assessing needs at the beginning of each plan. Or we're going to look at it as we have completed one of our MICIP goals. So if you have one goal and you're finishing that up and you're getting to the point of evaluating that goal, when you get it to that point, then you're going to need to reassess the needs. Now, a little different take on that is, well, maybe it's not that we're assessing needs, maybe we're talking monitoring and adjusting, which that will go and occur ongoing through the process after you have developed your plan.
One more here. Let's see. When developing a systems goal that's looking at the whole child, is it easy to end up with too much data? How do teams prioritize which data to use?
Very good. A lot of times we start with that perception. Start with the perception and see where that takes you, because that may say, yeah, the perception is correct. This is where we need to be spending our time and our energy. Or it may tell you, nope, we're going to have to dig a little further. And that's actually what we've got coming up here in step 7, looking at root cause. So we want to make sure that there are things that we can control. You might have heard that saying, control the controllables. Okay? Don't pick things in your plan that you can't control. You know, if it's not something you can really make a change to, then we're just spinning our wheels. So make sure you're picking things that we can have an impact on. That will also be a little bit of a driver for your data.
Frank, can I jump in with some
Yes.
just an extra thought on that?
Yes.
Dr. Rice in his presentation talked about leading indicators and lagging indicators. That's also kind of another way to think about reducing the amount of data that you're looking at. Some of the data might show you that there's a problem, but other data is going to show that something that you put into place worked. And so trying to just stay focused, like that's just maybe another way to think about what Frank said, focus on what you can control. And I have seen a lot of data stories that were packed with all kinds of data, but then when it came down to it, there were really only 2 things that they really wanted to see improvement on, and they could have really reduced the amount of data that they had in there.
And certainly the time to dig into and analyze lots of different sets of data. Yep, good point. So one of the last pieces for me to talk about here is how do we dig in and make sure that we are addressing what really needs to be addressed? So we pull up, we find the data, we take a look at it, and we need to dig it down using some root cause tools. And a couple of them that are built into the platform, we've got the fishbone diagram, we've got the 5 whys protocol, and then of course districts have the opportunity to pick and choose your own option. If you have a different choose your own adventure, that is okay too. Let's go to the next slide. When we talk about root cause, that's getting into the causal factors behind why something has occurred. Now, if you're a fan of Lipton and Wellman, they give 6 basic, causal factors that you can look at. It actually happens to fit the fishbone diagram really well. Okay? And so as a conversation with you and your team, you're going to take a look at and brainstorm around, well, what could be, reasons within curriculum or instruction or assessment or professional development, different causal, factors that could be impacting why we're seeing things the way we are. Right? Let's go to the next one there, Mike. We have some things coming in here. Okay. So root cause, again, that prevents that solutionitis. The thing that, well, my heart tells me this is really what we need to do. Or I got this gut feeling that here's what we really need to do. Okay, well, what's the data say? You'll hear me say that a lot. What does the data say? Go back to the data. All right? And so in this case, it was someone says, I think we need to do benchmark assessment. Well, no, actually, we need to establish a team to review and act on the data. Because, yeah, we can give all kinds of assessments, but if we don't look at the data, then what's it really doing for us? Okay? So, root cause is going to help us look at that area of strength. It's going to help us to identify strategies and opportunities for growth. Okay? Next slide, please. This is what you'll see in the platform. You'll see the 5 whys as its own little process that you can follow, which, again, it's like talking to a kindergartner. You have a kindergartner in the car, and they want to say, hey, Dad, why? And then you give an answer, but why? And you give another answer, why is that? And you ask, well, why? It's same mindset of digging and digging and digging and digging and digging deeper. But again, back to what Dave and I were just mentioned a minute ago, control the controllables. Make sure that we are in a space where it's something that we can have an impact on, something that we can do. If we get to the point where we're blaming parents, well, that doesn't really help us much, does it? There's not much we can control around that. All right. Fishbone, you also see a PDF for Fishbone that can be filled in. Let's go to the next slide. We can take a look. I think here's an example of one of the Fishbones. And up at the very top and at the very bottom, you can see those causal categories. For example, lack of communication, lack of family engagement, disjointed community supports. Or at the bottom, initiative overload, lack of professional learning, concerns with how we engage students. There's lots of things that we can dig into around causal categories. Then what we do as a team, we kind of fill in the details along the bones of the fish, and then we decide, okay, which one seems the most plausible to dig into first? So we're going to dig in and we're going to, again, go deeper through that root cause analysis. Let's go to the next slide. The 5 whys, just mentioned that as well. Let's go one more. I think it's one more. Let's see. Yes, here. Combining the 2 tools. This is probably one of the more powerful pieces that you can do with a MICIP team is start with the fishbone and get lots of brainstormed ideas layered in with a little bit of data, pick one of those areas, and then run that causal category through the 5 whys and dig even further. Okay? Because the point is, we want to get at what the root cause of the issue is, not just, slapping a Band-Aid on the very top. All right, let's go to the next slide. Last piece, the challenge statement. This is the last thing you do in the needs assessment before you get to writing a goal. And the challenge statement really, it's an if-then, it's a logic model. If we did this, then we should expect this as our result. Okay? And up here on the graph, as you can see, it might be the if we have these resources or inputs, if we do these activities, then we should start to see this output or this outcome coming off of that. If any of you are science folks out there, Mike loves it when I bring this up. That's claim evidence reasoning, right? It's the same idea. If we were to this, then we should be expecting this result. That's what leads us directly to forming a goal. And I think with the next slide, here's a couple of examples. Okay, Dave, can we go to the enhanced MICIP document for a second? So if you don't want to have all of your team with their fingers in the MICIP platform, and you want to work on process outside the platform, we have a really, really great tool developed by our friends over at Ottawa, Mike and his buddies over there. And so what this little document is, this enhanced MICIP document, it shows you step by step by step, everything that I've just covered with you, the nuts and bolts of assessed needs, with the exact same numbers, exact same screenshots, and lots of really great little links in here. And essentially, you download your own copy, and you can type in, on a Google Doc, essentially, you can type in all the responses for your team, and then you have one person who probably copy-pastes and put that back into the MICIP platform for you. So really, really great document. I use this all the places where I go when I work with teams and work with either their administrator or work with their team, and we just fill this right out as we're going. We go step by step by step. It usually takes multiple meetings or a number of hours to get through, but this is where you'll capture all of those thoughts, all of that data, and then be ready to put it into the platform. Okay, before we break for lunch, Hilda, any other last questions?
Frank, we did have a question back here. It was at this table. I saw a hand.
I was just looking for that, but I think I just found it.
Okay.
Thank you for your help.
Absolutely.
Hey, one really quick thing, that should have been a forced copy. Don't make any changes to that so you have access to it. Don't touch that enhanced document.
Don't make changes till Mike can get in and fix it. So, we are going to be breaking for lunch here momentarily. If you're coming back for part 2, you're going to get more nuts and bolts, everything from moving from creating a goal to strategies, activities, communication, all the other components moving forward, and that will continue your learning through the MICIP 101. Okay? Do we send them? All right. We send you to lunch. Have a great lunch, everybody.